Welcome, everybody, to the Jim Masters Show, entertainment, lifestyle, celebrity talk show series. Our next guest is Zara Phillips. She's an extraordinary singer, songwriter, musician. She's also an activist, an author, an actor, and so much more. And she is sharing something very special with us here on the show, and that is her film, Somebody's Daughter. Something very, very special and near and dear to her heart. And we're so excited to have her here on the show. And she is actually on tour because they're performing. So she is coming to us at the time of this broadcast from California, USA. We're excited about that. She's a singer, songwriter, actor, author, activist. She's an adoptee herself, too. Much of her work is centered around the adoption world, focused on improving and understanding the lifelong impact of adoption. She is a mother of three, and she's also married to musician Richard Thompson. And she divides her time between London and New Jersey. She was raised in North London, and she was adopted as a baby. And she found her birth mother at 24 after a lifelong search, her birth father at 51. She was always singing and writing as a child, which led her to becoming a harmony singer in the 1980s with acts like Bob Geldof, Bianco, David Essex, and Nick Kamen, and so many others. We're very excited to have her here as she celebrates the release of her extraordinary autobiographical film, as we're talking about here and celebrating on the show today, which is this beauty right here. We're going to show you a wonderful trailer from it as well. We're going to talk about the making of it, the purpose of it, the impact of it as well. Somebody's Daughter offers up some tough love truths that fly in the face of the often cheery, sanitized way adopted children and other beings are depicted in things like Disney films and other media. And from her years of advocacy, studying contemporary sociological research and personal experiences as an adopted person herself, a passionate lifelong advocate for adoptees knows that even well into adulthood, the existential struggles of feeling like outsiders with little known stories of their history and birth parents makes them at least 4 times more likely to commit suicide, which is something you might not have even known, but those facts bear out so many times. And they are also more inclined to turn to things like addiction as a coping mechanism, as well as Zara did. Zara did in her teens and early 20s. She said, as an adoptee prone to suffer the only trauma in the world where the victim is supposed to feel grateful, well, you have an opportunity to learn more about her story here because she's with us right now, and we are so honored to have her here. Before we bring her on, I have something special. We actually have a bit of the trailer we're going to show you for this incredibly insightful, inspiring, and beautifully shot film, Somebody's Daughter. This is really something special. Take a look, and then our special guest joins us right here, right now on the Jim Masters Show. We're so excited to have Zara Phillips here. Here's the trailer. Take a look.
I know you can't tell by looking at me, but I'm adopted. I could be an alien for all I know, just dropped off on Earth from out of space, expected to fit in.
I can change colours like a chameleon, blue and umber and grey.
That's what adoption can do to you.
You do know I met your mother at a Beatles concert, didn't you? Do you know what that means? I could be your biological father.
I just wanted to know basic things, like, what does my mother look like?
These are fake.
Yeah, listen, I'll even throw in a bit of fudge cake to that.
Oh my God! How could you do this to us after everything that we've done for you and your mother? You are killing me!
I am actually fine. Stop looking at me like that. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't even need to be here. It's so stupid.
Just don't look slutty!
She's got lovely teeth.
Well, what do you mean exactly by the word normal? I just do cocaine, speed, a little bit of ecstasy, great, and, Tipex thinner.
What we didn't know didn't hurt us.
And then I drink, but I only drink a little bit.
I was only 16, Sarah.
How do you find an Italian man when you only have his first name? I don't drink gallons the way you drink or under a bench.
Zara, you have a vacuum and you need to fill it.
Everything is okay. Now, do you want a donut?
And here she is, our very special guest, Zara Phillips, joining us again. She's on tour and on the road right now in California, the Sacramento area. Zara, welcome to the Jim Masters Show. A pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on your show.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. And what a fascinating trailer that is. And what a beautiful story. What inspired you to want to create this film for all of us to enjoy and appreciate, understand, and to feel?
Well, I think over the years, I've been talking about the lifelong impact of adoption for years, actually over 20 years. And I've written about it, and I've done songs and books and a couple of one-woman shows. And I think what happened to me in recent years is, as I sort of worked through my own healing around it, I could laugh more at the absurdity of the characters and the whole situation. And I think to reach more people these days, I mean, I have a book and then I had a one-woman show, but the story kept changing, which often happens with adoptees. Our stories just keep going. And I just thought film, and I was encouraged, film is a great way, and it's entertaining. To make it entertaining where I'm not in your face telling people this is how you should feel. I'm just showing you my story.
Was it hard to tell? Was it hard to relive or go deep and to share? Was there any hesitancy to share it all and bear it all as you've done so beautifully?
Well, there definitely over the years has been that. At the beginning, I wanted to protect my adopted parents, because as adoptees, that's what many of us do. We feel very loyal. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or the birth family. But I knew that, my parents now have passed on, but I knew that if I could really be helpful, I have to just be honest and to show people this is addiction. This is what it looks like. This is how you can get sober and stay sober for a long time in spite of unresolved things in your life. So I sort of wanted it to reach a wider audience, not just adopted people or those touched by adoption, but anybody that struggled in their lives and had difficulties with parents and just living.
What was that process like for you early on? Because you had these incredible moments in your life. You were raised in North London and adopted as a baby, and you found your birth mother at age 24 after a lifelong search, your birth father at 51. What was it like finding your birth mother at age 24? What was it like for you and for your birth mother?
Well, to be honest, at that time, I got sober very young at 22. And the first thing within 4 months that came up for me was, I need to know my story, because I'd always felt like a mistake. There was something I wasn't being told. And I knew that I always say to people, it's like you're reading a book and you start on chapter 2, but you miss out your whole chapter 1. And in those days, it was normal. We come from the closed adoption system. We're not told anything, just your mother was young. That was it. So when I went searching, I definitely had support around staying sober, but I didn't have the support around the adoption experience. So I didn't really understand that actually when you start searching and reunite, there's so much grief underneath all of it. I just felt angry most of my life, and I didn't really understand that a lot of that was grief around the situation. So when I met my birth mother, I think we were both, it was fabulous to reconnect with her. She was really happy. She was 16 when she got pregnant, 17 when she had me, put in hiding, as many women were in that era, made to feel terribly ashamed that she'd done the most, awful thing to her family. And she was just a teenager. So there was a lot of healing for both of us that took place, but then there was a lot of emotion that came up, which really took me by surprise, like the depth of it.
Exactly. Yes. What was some of that like? How deep did it get, and what were some of the things, the revelations that you learned along the way? And you learned so much about yourself with this discovery too.
Yeah.
You're
I
able to connect
realized,
the dots.
yes, I realized that I'd had grief my whole life
Mhm.
around it. And even though, you see, with adoptees, we're always told, you must be so grateful. You know, as a little kid, people would say to me, aren't you lucky you weren't left in a children's home? And you're like, how do I answer that?
Yeah.
I smiled, and yes, I'm very grateful to have these parents who did love me and all the rest of it. But I didn't feel grateful inside. So I was living this lie, if you like, and terrified of being abandoned again by my adopted parents. So would do anything to make sure that I was safe in that way. So I think the shock for me was when I met my my birth mother, was the level of grief and rage about the whole situation, that nobody had explained these things to me when I was younger. And you know how challenging it is to live as an adoptee with strangers who love you, but you really don't necessarily, have a lot in common. And pretending all the time that, I always say, like, I was holding my mother's hand, looking at other women on the street, wondering if they were my birth mother. So you sort of live this dual life.
In some of my professional work, I did a television news segment where we flew out to Kansas, USA, and interviewed a very renowned nurse who's involved in the birthing unit of a big hospital. And one of the things that I learned, which is the very first 33 months of a newborn's life, are some of the most crucial. The skin to skin touch, the kangaroo care, which is where the baby is not carried in just some sort of a car seat kind of thing like a pocketbook, but they're carried right here. And all of these things that are so important right in the beginning, that skin to skin touch, especially with the mother, the bonding. And in this case, obviously that didn't happen in those early years, which would have been something, of course, extra special. Tell us about the importance of all that and what you've learned about that as well.
What I've learned, which is so interesting, I'm so glad that you talk about that, because people don't always think about it. They just think, oh, well, I'll have a baby and I'll give it to another mother and the baby's going to be fine. But nature is so clever. The baby has an expectation to meet its mother when it's born. I mean, it's like breathing. This is, the baby's been inside, I'm a mother, the baby has been inside your stomach, the baby. And when the baby lies on the mother, synapses, I'm not brilliant at describing the brain stuff, but the synapses in the brain start forming. So levels of serotonin, the stuff that makes you feel happy, all these things happen when the baby lays on its mother's chest. It's the way nature designed it. So when a baby is taken away, which in my case, I think I was with her a couple of days. Then my mother got very ill. Then I was left in the hospital. Then I was put in foster care, as was normal back in the day, to make sure that we were actually physically okay to be adopted out. So our brain chemistry is actually different. And I think what I've learned over the years is why so many of us have struggled with addiction was the drugs make up, as many addicts know, they change your brain chemistry and they give you what was missing. Mm. But of course, then we know, at first you're like, wow, this is great. I feel fantastic. And then you keep chasing it and you're like, oh, now I don't feel so good.
Not so good. Right. Exactly. So you dealt with that and you shared very authentically and openly about some of those struggles and some of those roads you went down, seeking some sort of sense and purpose and connection. What was that like, that period, and how did you find ways to work through it?
Well, you mean before I got sober? I
Yeah.
mean, you know, unfortunately, I mean, I was raised in a lovely family. My father was a judge. From the outside, everyone would go, "Well, you know, went to a good school." And in a way, I was like the classic adoptees. I have a brother a couple of years older than me, also adopted, and he was using heroin at a young age. You know, I was around drugs very young. And in a way, I didn't really know what was normal and what wasn't normal because that was my world. But I think I knew there was always this sort of voice in my head that knew this is going to kill you. And there has to be more to life than this. So I'm glad that I've sort of had that in my nature. But yeah, there were years, you know, acting out sexually. I mean, just self-destruction, no self-esteem, and self-hatred. And I think, you know, a lot of the journey has been about healing that and loving oneself. It sounds so corny, but it really is that sort of, you know, way of looking at it. And I was very lucky. I went to a 12-step meeting young, and I met people that surrounded me straight away. And I saw that they had this, you know, as they say, they had this light in their eye. They were laughing. I was just full of rage. And something in me was like, you know, I don't want to give up on life. There is definitely something more. I've just got to trust these people and go for it. It has not been easy. It's not easy. And for anyone that struggles, I know that it's not easy. But I think once you make the decision to say, I'm going to try this, I'm going to put this down, this drug and this alcohol, cigarettes, you know, the men, whatever it is, and just see what happens.
So the book came first, and a one-woman show as well, right?
Yeah, I know, because what happened was I wrote the book and I had found my birth father. I don't know if I should give too much away in case people want to see the film, but I had found my birth father, which was impossible when in my 20s. There was no way I was going to find this man who was Italian, and I knew his name was Vittorio. That was it. Right, in the whole world, how are you going to find this person? But Ancestry DNA changed everything for a lot of people, for adoptees specifically, and we have started reuniting with our birth families. So I wrote the book. I actually had another book before that called Mother Me, which was way before I found my birth father, which talked about more being a mother as an adoptee, having children. So then when I wrote Somebody's Daughter and I finished it, the story hadn't ended. Well, I thought it had ended, but then a couple of years later, some dramatic stuff happened in my story. And I was like, oh gosh, I thought I was so over talking about this adoption stuff, but I realized there was a lot more to talk about. And I didn't want to do another book. So I did the one-woman show, which was actually much funnier than the book. I think it was almost like there was so much trauma and, you know, sad things that it was almost like, okay, I got to find the humor in this, because all my parents, biological parents, are such characters. It was quite easy in a way to characterize them more in the film. And but I did the one-woman show for a while, and it was really received well. And at the time I said to the director, let's just film the one-woman show and that will be it. And we had voiceovers, and I played both my mothers. And then he encouraged me. He said, let's bring in other actors. So I was really lucky in London. I got some great actors that wanted to be part of the project. And it really added a lot more life to it, you know, by telling the story.
By telling the stories. And again, it was a lifelong search. The birth father, you were 51, and that's amazing. Is there you have this incredible background as a singer, songwriter, musician, you know, performer, and entertainer. Did you notice whether or not the mother, father had any of that background? Was any of that sort of, you know, passed down in its own unusual way, shape, or form?
Well, I have to tell you, what was really amazing for me was my birth mother side, not so much. And then when I met my birth father and family, I mean, there's tons of them. There's so many siblings and so much family. His brothers were stuntmen. One of his brothers was a famous actor in Italy. There's musicians. And I wrote poetry. For some reason, when I was like 4 or 5, I used to write poems. I was like obsessed with poetry. And I found out that my grandfather was a poet. I mean, he wrote like spiritual poetry, but it was such a great connection for me. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. So yes, I definitely, and sort of it sort of justifies what I do. You know, somehow I was like, oh, it makes me legitimate. I'm an actor, I'm a writer. Oh yes, it's in my DNA.
Which is incredible when you discover that. I tell you, it helps sort of connect some dots for you too, right? On a beautiful level.
Yeah, it really does. You know, my parents were not creative. I mean, they would judge, very legal. And I was in the bedroom singing and dancing and charging people to come in and watch me perform. So it was very different.
Were you always that way as a kid? Were you always, yeah.
I tried my own mother to come and watch me. We put on shows and she'd have to provide the tea and the biscuits, and then she'd have to pay entrance and to pay for the tea that she'd made.
She is from North London, folks. That's where the tea comes in. When you discovered your mother and your father, were your adoptive parents still around? And if so, did they embrace it all? Did they encourage you to find them? And did it change that dynamic at all with them?
Well, one of the highlight moments I had was I did not tell my adoptive parents that I had found my birth mother for 2 years because I was terrified that they would reject me. And I remember driving down the street thinking, I have to tell them. Why am I not telling them? And it was like that light bulb moment. I'm afraid that they will say I'm now no longer part of their family. And I was an adult at 24. But I did finally tell them. And what's really sad, and I think for a lot of adopted parents that I've spoken with, they feel so threatened. And I always say, you know, I have 3 kids. I love all my children. There is room in our hearts to love many, many people and extra parents. It doesn't take away from how I loved my adoptive mother, but I had to know my story and my beginning. And actually what happens is once I felt more connected to my adopted parents. It was just living in this limbo state of having no story. And my adoptive mother just was, you know, she was infertile. She'd never dealt with her grief. Nobody at that time ever said to these women, yes, you can adopt a baby, but you need to deal with your grief and loss that you never had your own biological child, because there is a lot there. And, you know, it was very, very hard for her. And at the beginning, when I met my birth mother and I told her, she was, you know, a little bit dismissive. And then before she died in 2008, which was years later, she actually spoke to her on the phone for the first time, but they never met. She just couldn't. And I had to accept that my mother couldn't do it. She did read one of my books and she sort of said, oh, it's a real book. I don't know what she thought I'd written it on. And she said, I just never really understood what you went through. You know, she admitted that. So everybody in the triad has their own grief and their own trauma, really.
They have their own, exactly. And there's different ways that they react to it and deal with it and work through it on so many different levels. I think one of the beautiful things that you want to do with the book, with the One Woman Show, with this film, this loving and touching and heartfelt film, you want little adoptees to have a chance to be heard in a way kids of, you say, your generation were not. And if you can help one adoptee feel validated, one parent to look at his or her kid and understand the grieving process that happens, that would make the film and all of your related media endeavors completely worthwhile. wild. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. I've worked a lot with adopted families. I've done songwriting with teens, and I've spoken about my experience. And I think my passion is because I had to be silent, and it was a generational thing. I don't blame my adopted parents. They were told, just adopt the baby. It will not know the difference, and you will not know the difference. They were not warned of all the emotional stuff that we may have. So I think because I live that way, it has become a passion, and I love children, for them to have their voice, because I know how beneficial it's going to be for them. And again, it's not about them not loving their parents and their parents not doing a good job. It's just what we need. We need for our birth parents to be talked about as if it's normal, because we're part of everybody. When people say, "Oh, you like your mother?" or I am part of 4 people. I have bits of all of them in me, and I see that. So, I say to the adopted parents, actually, you will have a closer relationship with your child if you can listen to them and know that it's not about you. It's just they need to express it. Because how could you not have feelings about the fact that your mother gave you away? No matter, as an adult, I can tell you, well, she was 16, she wasn't married, she was Jewish, she was Italian. Logically, I can tell you that. But the feeling inside is, she walked away from me. How could a mother do that? And that's the stuff that we live with, and we have to sort of reconcile within ourselves.
It's what's really wonderful about this, too, is described not as a maudlin, preachy docudrama, which you would assume it would be. It's far from that. And it has hope and inspiration in it as well, joyful and entertaining and bright and engaging. And it's a fast-paced blend of pathos and cheeky British humor, which we all love. Is it Hyacinth Bucket or Hyacinth Bouquet?
She is like my adopted mother, just to let you know. That's
Patricia Rutledge or Hyacinth?
Hyacinth.
Oh, Hyacinth, right? Did you use the Royal Dalton china when you had the tea?
Oh, yeah, I love all that.
Makes you nervous holding it, right? Hyacinth, that's Keeping Up Appearances, the great Britcom series that has been seen here on PBS for years. And for those who aren't familiar with it, it's starring Patricia Rutledge is the incredible actress in that. And it's complemented your film by whimsical, hilariously over-the-top dramatizations, which all help you come to terms with the challenges that have plagued you all your life. Humor, whimsy, all of that is important too, to reach people, right? To add some levity to what can be a heavy topic. That's important. You sprinkle that into this.
Yes, yes. I mean, I think for years I was so serious, because I think that's what happens to you when you're first dealing with hard things in life. It feels serious. And it took me but I've also, I like to think I've had a sense of humor, and I've also grown up watching all those British sitcoms. And as I got older, I've been able to laugh more. I suppose as I've been healing and connecting with these people, who are my biological family. My birth father had really a funny sense of humor. And, I know the stuff that helps me the most when I'm watching something is where there's that balance of humor and, sadness, if you like, but how they mix it in. I find that very powerful. And nobody wants to be preached to. I don't.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's more of a conversation than it is a lecture kind of thing, which is so important if you really want to deeply reach people. One of the funniest scenes comes from after you learn through a series of ancestry DNA matches with a biological sister you never knew existed, that your birth father, again, was Italian. And you mentioned that that wasn't something that you had envisioned previously, right?
Well, I actually did know I didn't find out I was Italian until I was in my 20s, but then I was never quite sure, until you actually see the DNA, you're never quite sure. But no, I was quite surprised to find out, and I actually loved it when I found out I was half Italian. I had years ago, I had a boyfriend say, I only go out with Italian women. And, I was like, well, I don't know what I am. And I thought, wow, he had a radar for Italian women. So, yeah, I mean, I think what's so fun about that, well, it made sense also emotionally, why I'm like, that emotional roller coaster that Italians can be on. I am very much like that. And it just made sense to how I looked. I grew up, like I say, my birth parents are Jewish. I didn't really look, I'm very tall and slim. I didn't have the body type as many of as the women around me. So it just made sense. And I did actually find out that my parents knew the whole time, but they never told me. And that was very upsetting. But again, I think that's the adopted parent either thinking, oh, we don't want her to feel different, when actually it's so important to recognize my child is from this culture. And I understand when adoptive parents say, oh, we don't see color and we don't see this and that. But we want to say, no, you have to see it. You need to see us for who we are and embrace who we are. Because actually it makes us feel more connected by it being acknowledged.
One of the scenes too, in reference to your father, biological father, is you recreate this moment when you're getting ready to meet Vittorio, who you learn lives relatively close to you at that time in suburban New Jersey, at a local Dunkin' Donuts, and you turn the moment of struggling to pick out the right outfit to meet a man you've never met at a donut shop in an outrageously enjoyable scene, fully conveying your fears, trepidation, even as you make all of us laugh. Meeting your Italian father in New Jersey at the Dunkin' Donuts must have been, what was that like? Was it a scene out of The Sopranos?
Well, I have to say this thing about choosing what to wear. I did the same thing with my birth mother too. And, I think what I've heard with other adoptees too is we have to look good because we don't really know what we look like. We want to be accepted. So we really focus on looking good to be accepted. So I did the same thing with my birth mother. I was up all night. What am I going to wear? What am I going to wear? And so when my birth father called me and I really didn't have much time, he was like, I'm free in 1 hour. You can meet me. And I knew it was going to take me at least an hour to get to Dunkin' Donuts. And I just couldn't believe I was doing the same thing. I was like,
fast in New Jersey.
I was just throwing the clothes around the room. Like, what do I wear? What do I wear? What do I wear? And it's so interesting that I went back into that. He didn't care what I was going to wear. He just wanted to meet me. My birth mother didn't care. But it was that thing of, if I can just look okay on the outside, I will be accepted. So, and I drove sort of in a daze. I think I was on the phone to a friend, like hyperventilating the whole way on the freeway.
On the freeway. Throughout the New Jersey Turnpike or Garden State Parkway, one of them, right? Throughout the journey, you're buoyed by the witty encouragement of two middle-aged guys that you met in the first AA meeting, who serve as what you call the amusing Greek chorus to bounce things and thoughts off of. Tell us about them and the importance of them in your work.
Oh, they have, I mean, they really did save me. I met them at my very, very first AA meeting. I walked in and as I recreate in the film, myself, my younger self, which at first I was like, do I play my younger self or do I get another actress? And then we're like, nah, has to be me. And, the very first meeting, I sat there, my arms crossed, I don't need to be here. And And, Jimmy, he just came and sat next to me. Well, he sort of sat one chair away from me because nobody had come over to say hello to me. They were probably like, who is this young woman full of rage? We're going to stay away from her. And, just very gently, again, that acceptance, of giving somebody your time and just saying to me, you don't have to stay in this place. It is possible to change your life. And again, they didn't sort of shove it down my throat because they could see I was angry at the time. So very, very gently. And they're like my close brothers to me to this day. I can phone them with anything. And I think we all need that, whoever we are. We need somebody to reflect back honestly and to say, Zara, you are full of, won't swear on your program, but you need to see.
Full of vim and vigor. Spunk.
And you are, you need to take a good look at yourself because you are going to head back for disaster. And they've been that for me. And then I'll argue, no, why do I have to do it and all that stuff? And they're like, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? It's like, oh, okay. So, I mean, they've just always been there for me and they've really,
They're practical. Yeah, they're very straightforward and practical.
Oh, yeah. Because, as addicts, we can't mess around. Anybody knows, out there that's had an addiction problem knows we cannot mess around with it. I don't have that luxury of one drink and one cigarette or whatever. I just don't have that in my DNA. It will kill me. So they remind me of that. And, the benefits of staying sober and the gifts, even though it can feel really hard, living life sober, it's just the most amazing experience because you do get to feel everything.
You do. You really, really do. How has music helped you through as a therapeutic healing agent that music can be, the writing, the performing of it and all? Because for the audience that's watching, all our viewers who we welcome from around the world, it's good to have you with us here on the Jim Master Show. In addition to everything else, the acting and writing, you're a talented singer and songwriter, and you launched your career in the 1980s, appearing in music videos and providing backing vocals on tour with Bob Geldof and Matt Bianco, David Essex, Nick Kamen, and taking some of those years away to create wonderful endeavors, raise a family. And then you came back strong in the 2000s, releasing 2 albums, and it's just been on and on and on. Your multifaceted musical resume includes Whitney Houston and Bob Dylan in Chicago, earning a Best Homegrown Documentary honor for your 2008 film Roots Unknown, and the first book, Mother Me, too, and all these wonderful things. It's creative outlets. How has that helped you with the healing process, especially the musical side of things?
Well, I think I actually don't know how people live without writing. Especially when you're trying to stay sober. I needed something else to do, where to put those emotions. So for me, I mean, I've written some really bad songs and probably some very bad articles, but it has just helped me get through so much. And I think with music, for anybody, that goes through things, we will choose a song to listen to, whether we're feeling sad or happy. We will identify with the lyrics, with the artist, with the melody. I mean, it's just a lifesaver for me. Absolutely. No doubt about it. And
doing a talk here?
Sorry?
Are you doing a talk in that photo, like a presentation?
Oh, no,
it's a one-woman show?
One-woman show. Yeah, that's my one-woman show. But no, I mean, it really does help tremendously. And I just think, sharing one story in whatever format, honestly, always helps another individual from one to the other. It just helps us as human beings. So yeah, whenever and actually I think probably I write my best stuff when I'm feeling, when I'm going through the hard things. In a way, sometimes you write your best stuff. It's harder to write when you're actually feeling really happy. Yeah,
more when you're reflective, and deeper when it's melancholy and there's some cello music in the background or something, right?
Singing is very relaxing. And something I have learned recently that somebody was telling me, about people that smoke cigarettes. And I loved to smoke when I was in my 20s. It's all about the out breath, actually, because when you exhale, it calms your whole nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never really thought about that before. And it's the same for singing with me. When I sing, I feel calm, like it definitely calms my nervous system. And I just love it. I really enjoy singing so much.
And those two things play off each other. You can almost flip them. It's because you love it that it relaxes you and you feel so good. Those two things are interwoven, aren't they?
Yeah. Yes, probably. Yes, absolutely.
So you're on tour right now at the time of this broadcast. And for those who aren't familiar maybe with the music and they want to know more, tell us about the musical background and the genres that you like to play and perform. A little bit about the musical side of Zara.
Well, I suppose my music is more like sort of, I don't know, pop folk kind of thing. And I use my songs really to help tell the story. I mean, I've been in bands for years. And then, in the last few years, I've used it for one-woman shows, and definitely for this film. The songs are written by me and my husband, Richard Thompson, who has been in the business for years, singer-songwriter, one of the top guitar players. I've learned a lot from him about writing. He's a really talented songwriter, and I've done, in the last few years, I've sung with him in his solo shows. But over the last few months, we've been working with his band. COVID and everything delayed going out on a band tour. So I'm back to doing harmony singing again, like I did in my 20s, which I'm loving. It's so much fun. And I'm dancing, I play the tambourine and, back with a full band and working with some very accomplished musicians. And, you're always learning.
Yes, absolutely. When you're curious and you have your eyes and your ears and your heart open, you're absolutely always learning. Was there a celebration or a birthday, anything recently?
Well, yesterday, election day.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday to you. Yes.
Hey, I won't say, you can figure out how old I am. But it was fun. Yes, it was an interesting, shall we say.
I did a little research and we have evidence as such.
Isn't that sweet? The
That's
band,
cool. I love it.
Got me flowers in the hat.
The band brought you flowers. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. And the shows have just been going so well. I mean, Richard has a fan base that he's had for years, and they're very loyal and dedicated. And so all the shows are really sold out and there's such great energy. Really, we're just having a good time on the tour bus, going from state to state. Yeah, I'm very, very grateful. I mean, you can never sort of imagine how things turn out in your life. Really.
You can't always predict it or script it exactly. How about other relatives, siblings, cousins, others? Have there been others that have been discovered as a result of these discoveries of the biological mother and father?
Oh, yeah, that would take me like an hour. There are so many. My birth father had 7 children with 6 different mothers. He was very good looking. And very charming. So that was something I didn't find.
He was very good looking and very charming.
And actually, if you met him, he was just so nice that you couldn't really be mad with him because he was just like, there are a lot of us. And I think I didn't really expect that. The focus was so like, I just want to meet my birth father. Right. I always knew for you, even though I'd met my mother, I was like, I'm not complete. Maybe part of me knew I'd find more of myself or, identify more with this family. I don't know. It was such a drive. For some adoptees, they're like, oh, whatever. But for me, I was like, I will do whatever I can to find him. And the most shocking part, or not shocking, surprising part, was I matched with a sister on Ancestry DNA who is also adopted, and she's American. And she was living in LA. I lived in LA for years, and I moved as she moved to LA. And she went to adoption groups that I had gone to. And she knew people that I knew, but nobody put us together or connected us because she's blonde and American and I'm British and dark. I mean, so there were so many ridiculous coincidences. We're 2 years apart almost to the day. And in fact, I'm very excited because I will be seeing her on Saturday in LA. And we just have this really incredible relationship. And in fact, we're doing a screening of the film in LA on Saturday at an organization for adoption and foster kids. And she's going to be on the panel with me for the first time. And I think I'll probably cry through the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be very powerful. And I have other siblings. I mean, I've really met everybody, but not everybody is in contact because, again, there's this loyalty. You know, my birth father was married to a woman for a very long time. 40, you know, he had all these other women, and then he was with one woman for 40 years and had 2 boys with her. And, you know, they won't have a relationship with me because they feel loyal to their mother. It's hard for women to find out that your husband had all these children you didn't know about. I understand that. So it's shameful. Again, you know, adoptees, I think the very hard part of being an adoptee is we bring up all the family secrets. We are the shame. And it's not our fault that we were born or that we're here. And yet we will trigger that in all the family members. And I have definitely battled with that because I just want to know everybody.
You want to know everybody, exactly, because it's the relatives, it's the history, it's the family. Are there any benefits? Are there any things about the situation that you find have actually been an advantage, have been some additional benefits when you look at it?
To being adopted?
Yeah.
I think it gives me more compassion for people. And I think it makes me connect more with children and understand them. Or maybe I just love babies and little kids. Yeah, I mean, I like to think that I am a compassionate person, that I can understand people's situations more. It's not been easy because sometimes I just want them to understand me only. And I've learned that I've had to look at everybody. Everybody has their, you know, feelings around things. I think it's made me able to adapt easily in situations because, you know, we're chameleons. We have to fit in. So there's all of those things that I think are beneficial. And it just makes for good storytelling. I'm never low on material. I mean, it's so funny when people are like, wow, this story is so incredible. And even my son at the beginning, he's like, Mom, nobody's ever going to believe you. You know, they're never going to believe this story. And I said, I know, isn't it great? I don't even have to think about what to write. It's just been given to me. So all of that is very beneficial.
Yeah. What is the reaction, like you say, of children, and what's the reaction? Are they fascinated? Is this something fascinating as well to them?
I think for children of adoptees, it's never going to be quite the same for them as it is for us. I mean, my children, they grew up knowing my birth mother. They just knew who she was. And they're like, what's the big deal? We just have an extra grandmother, you know, and we get extra presents, and we have aunts and uncle. I have a brother and sister from that side. But I think more that they're protective. You know, when I found my birth father, they were like, are you sure, Mum, this is the right person? They didn't want me to get hurt. But they've definitely come along with me, and they were older. And it was actually great to share that with them. My girls were there the first time my birth father called me. My kids came with me we were in England one year and we met one of my brothers, and they were with me to help me through it. And I think they really do enjoy, you know, they enjoy knowing more about their history, but it's never going to have the level of grief and loss because they know who their parents are from the beginning.
Exactly right.
So they're
Yeah.
not going to have my stuff. And I do have their voiceover. Well, I have things that my kids said over the years in my film, where they would, I'll never forget, it's actually quite funny. My younger one was about 8, sitting in the back of the car, talking to her girlfriends. And I know I always love that when you're driving and you can actually hear what the kids are saying. And she was like, if I get pregnant when I'm a teenager, my mum says she's going to raise the baby for me because no baby will ever be given up for adoption in this house. And I was like, well, it's not quite what I meant, but they knew when they were younger, or as they got to teens, I'm like, whatever happens, the baby stays in the family. Whatever situation you find yourself in, I will always be there for you. But she's 8, and I'm thinking, I didn't mean that you just go out and get pregnant when you're a teenager and give me the baby. But then it's very sweet, how they have thought about it.
Yeah. A few years after you penned this fabulous song, I'm Legit, co-written with Daryl McDaniels, DMC of Run DMC. And it was a very successful single in the adoption world and beyond. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. So that's sort of a separate thing. So I don't know if people are aware, but in America, many states, birth records for adoptees are sealed. And what that means is when somebody is adopted, their original birth certificate, which everybody has, with the names of their birth parents, is put away, locked away, and they are not allowed to see it. And they are given another birth certificate which says they are from their adopted parents. Now, in England, it's slightly different. I had an original birth certificate and I had my adoption certificate, which tells me I'm adopted. In America, you don't have that. So you would actually not even know you were adopted by looking at your birth certificate. So in New Jersey, many years ago, I was asked to come to the Senate and talk about what it's like in England, because our records opened in 1975, meaning when I searched, I could get access to my original birth certificate. And I felt very passionate about that. I was stunned. America, to me, was supposed to be this country that's so way ahead, and you're denying people their name. Like, I just couldn't even believe it. So I became friends with Daryl when I lived in LA, and not knowing he also lived in New Jersey, and I moved to New Jersey. And he was a late discovery adoptee, meaning he didn't know until he was in his 30s. And we talked about how can we explain to people about these birth records. So again, you were talking earlier about music and the importance, write a song, do a video. And that's what we did. I'm very proud of that, actually.
That's quite an accomplishment. Absolutely. And you also had the one-woman show Beneath My Father's Sky,
Yes.
directed by 2 guests who were originally with us just a couple of weeks ago, special guests on the Jim Masters show, Eliza and Eric Roberts.
Yeah.
And he just competed with the Dancing with the Stars, and it won Best Direction at New York City's United Solo Festival, and was performed in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Connecticut, and London. What was it like doing that and working with Eliza and Eric Roberts?
It's funny, I saw that they'd been on your show. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, what a coincidence.
Small world, isn't it?
See them again on the weekend. But
tell them we said hello.
I will.
Said hello.
I have known them for years, actually. And Eliza was very, very supportive. So my first one-woman show was called Beneath My Father's Sky, and about my relationship with my adopted dad when my mother died, and my search for my birth father. But I never thought I was going to find my birth father at that time. There was no way. And, Eliza she calls herself half adopted. She didn't grow up with her biological father and was adopted by her stepfather. So she sort of identified with some of those issues. And, I'd never done anything like that before at that time. So it was about 10 years ago doing that one-woman show. And she just coached me and encouraged me, and Eric helped direct. And, they were they're just so talented, the pair of them. And again, I learned so much from them. And yeah, I was thrilled. And that it was very well received too. And I loved it. I was like, oh my God. Eliza's like, doing a one-woman show is the hardest thing you can do as an actor. And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm just going to go for it. But I think I like that because I've done a lot of talks about adoption. I've sung. So it was all in a way, just putting that whole thing together as a performance piece made sense.
Absolutely right. And they're a wonderful couple. They complement each other so beautifully, Eric and Eliza, which is so nice to see. You've spent many years too facilitating workshops with adopted families and mental health professionals too, which I think is something even more deeper and connecting. It's a beautiful thing to do, Zara.
Well, again, I didn't really mean to do any of this. I just got asked to do it. And somebody heard me speak many years ago at some conference, and they had a school, it's called the Hyde School, and there are a couple of them where teens that were really struggling would go and stay in this school. And they realized that 10% of their population were adopted families, and they would do these workshops with other families, and they knew that they needed something specifically. So they saw that these teens were struggling with drug addiction, suicide attempts, and they would bring me in to do songwriting. And what I really enjoyed I did that for quite a few years, was that no matter what group I had, and I'd get all the teens to write lyrics about what it felt like to be adopted, and they would all write the same thing. Does she think about me? Basically, does she think about me? Am I remembered? And they also struggled with being honest with their adopted parents about how they felt. Again, afraid, what if I tell them I'm going to upset my mother? And then I'd have a group of the parents, and we'd all get together. And there was so much, healing that took place where these adopted parents were so desperate. My child is on drugs. I now know. Like I would say to the adopted parent, what is the least thing you understood before you adopted? And they said, and again, no matter what group, they would say to me, the level of grief my child has, I never understood. I was never told. So, I think, again, it ties in with what we were saying earlier of, if I can do that to help these kids, it gives me a sense of purpose, if you like, for everything that I've been through.
The level of grief, is the grief tied to that there's years and time missed with the biological parent? Is it also that the life you've been living with the people you've been living with is not exactly what it would have been perhaps with the biological parent? What are some of the things that one grieves about deeply?
Well, I think for adoptees, we're always told you should be great, or aren't you grateful? And when you think about it, if you have a little child that's mother just died, society would be like, I'm so sorry you lost your mother. That's so hard. Or they'd get a book for the child, or they'd support the child in some way. And really for us, it's the same feeling. It's like your mother has died, but yet but you don't really know if she's died. She's out there. They call it ambiguous loss. They talk about soldiers missing in action. And they say, for families that have soldiers missing in action, it's the same kind of feeling. So there's this PTSD around it. Babies grieve. From the beginning, babies grieve. Babies know. So when they're separated, and I always say, they say it's recalled but not remembered. So it stays within ourselves. And I think that's why a lot of adoptees act out, because it's this feeling, but we have no words for it. And I think, so there's that grief when you're little, and you don't really want to tell your mum that because you love your mum. And how can I say I'm sad about this other mother? And then I think for me as an adult, when I reunited, even though I'm so joyful, and I mean, at the moment, I'm having the best time. My aunt called me from Italy this morning to wish me happy birthday. I mean, it's unbelievable. But there's always that sadness of, I've missed out on so many years. I only had my birth father 2 years and he passed away. You know, like some adoptees find graves, you know, all this hope. So I just don't think there can be one without the other. But I'll say to people, the grief now lives alongside me. It never leaves, but it doesn't consume me in the way that it used to. And that's just by doing the work and being honest and just saying, I'm sad. This is not fair. Why should I miss out on having these relationships, especially with people I get on with so well?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, it's really what you're sharing. The One Woman Show, the book, the music, this fabulous film is really incredible, and it's so heart-centric. Rebecca Bloom, women's wellness advocate, writer, and storyteller, she said, which the film's name, again, everybody watching, Somebody's Daughter, it hits all the right notes. What a creative, smart, funny, tender-hearted, meaningful, knowing and bittersweet chronicle of the multi-talented Zara Phillips adoption experience. The feels are universal, how to square yearning with gratitude and make room for authentic joy and honest pain. And I learned and grew watching this utterly lovely film. That's Rebecca Bloom. And I'm sure you've received a lot of great feedback from it, huh?
Oh, no, I really have. And I was actually quite surprised because you never know, right, when you do a project, what's going to happen. And you know, it's cathartic for me to do. And I was really nervous when we did the first screening because, you know, are people going to laugh? I found actually some people were laughing in places and I'm like, that actually wasn't supposed to be funny. But we did get a lot of laughter. And, you know, I don't know, I don't know how it all came together. I think any artist, you'll be like, how did this come together? I don't know, but it did.
It just did, right?
Did, and it's definitely seems to be working.
You know, it is. And it's a beautiful thing that you're doing, Zara. And congratulations on it. And I know there will be a lot more, you know, in terms of creativity coming our way to benefit all of us. It's just a beautiful story. And, you know, your openness and your willingness to share it, I think, is exemplary. And it still continues to help you as it helps others. And then, of course, you have the whole entire career as a singer and songwriter and musician and actor. And you know, you're an activist as well on these topics, which I think is something very important and beautiful as well. And thanks for stopping by the show. I know you're busy, you're on tour, you got things happening there, but to actually take time during all that to join us on their Jim Masters Show series. Really, it was a wonderful conversation, and I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you, Zara.
Oh, God, I really did. And I really appreciate the questions that you asked to help educate about this topic, because people still don't, you know, they don't really understand that babies know everything, that there's a lifelong impact to all of it. So I really appreciate you asked some really great questions, and, you know,
pleasure is all mine. Come by and see us again.
Yes.
And your other half is also welcome to join us as well. We can celebrate his amazing career. And
come on.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the website as well. And of course, she's on social media. And if you missed it, joined us late, we showed a trailer as well, which you can see by just watching this episode again. We showed it in the beginning. And it's something that has truly been a labor of love for accomplished singer, songwriter, musician, writer, author, activist, actor, and guest, valued guest on the Jim Masters Show.
Look.
There it is. I was going to say, Somebody's Daughter, a film, Zara Phillips. Thank you for being with us, Zara. A real pleasure to meet you. You're now what we call a Jim Masters Show lovety, love and levity together. And I know we thank all the viewers watching and comments as well. That means a lot. And come see us again. Spread the word about the Jim Masters show.
Absolutely.
This will be archived, of course, on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV, so people can see it again. And if anybody thoroughly enjoyed it, give it a like, leave a comment. Maybe this is a personal story on your life as well, and you want to share your story with us. Zara will be able to see the comments in our comments section below. So interact, leave a comment for us, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, all those great things, Jim Masters TV. And Zara, thank you very much, and continued safe travels on the tour.
Yeah.
And really appreciate you being with us on the show today. It was beautiful.
Thank you again.
You're going to have a spot of tea now, right?
Tea.
Some tea, little biscuits. All right. You be well, my friend, and come join us again. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
It was brilliant, as they say. Right?
Good. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye-bye now. Fabulous singer, songwriter, musician, actor, author, activist, the one and only Zara Phillips joining us here on the show. We hope you enjoyed it, gang. It was absolutely amazing. ZaraPhillips.net is the website, and so much more. And again, what a great story. Very open and honest and complete and ongoing. We really appreciate her being with us on the show, and we appreciate you being here as well. The name of the film, again, is Somebody's Daughter. Look for it. You'll be glad you did. It's very touching. It's funny. It's warm. It's engaging. It's inspiring. And you're going to want to include it in your life. And she's been so open and authentic about sharing her story, as she's done bits and pieces with us, me and you, here on the Jim Masters Show. Enjoyed this episode. Of course, as always, we do say give the episode a like. Click the thumbs up like that's on the channel. Share this episode with folks you think would enjoy it. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. Click the notification bell so you never miss any of our episodes. And also leave a comment below for us as well. We'd appreciate that. For all of us here, I'm your host, Jim Masters, thanking you for your time this time till next time. Thanks to everybody watching. We love having all of you here from around the world. We appreciate you. And don't forget to love one another, take care of one another, and don't forget to love yourself. Very important to do that. Be well. Come see us again right here on the Jim Masters Show. We love having you with us. And cheers.